Hey, welcome back, everyone, with the Beyond the Dirt podcast. I got Hunter Slivka here, and we got a special guest who actually represents multiple facets of the organization, and Brian Hrdlicka. And thanks for coming on, Brian. I think we'll start out with I think I should probably refer to him as Mr. Boss because Brian is actually our chairman commissioner here at the Howard SWCD. And if you just want to kind of touch as far as what made you want to be a part of a commissioner aspect here, and then how did you get involved being the actual chairman?
Yeah, pretty easy, Hunter. So I guess quick background. I guess I grew up 10 miles away from Cresco here, southwest big metropolis of Schley. I guess population 30. So longtime Cresco native. High school here. Went to Iowa State. Majored in ag business and agronomy. My goal was always to get back to the Cresco area here. So I had worked ag retail for a neighboring cooperative for about 8 years. And back in 2018, I had the opportunity to come to Cresco. And it's something I said, as I said, I've wanted to get this way for a long time. So I planted a little more roots here locally, and that was about the time I joined the board here. And I remember getting approached. It was relatively new to me. I knew from being an agronomist and that side, I knew this side existed, I guess, but I've always wanted to learn a little bit more, kind of the rhyme or reason as to why you guys promote what you do. I always see it secondhand going on in the country, but it's nice to see that whole process from beginning to end now. So that was what intrigued me. So yeah, I joined the board back in 2018, and I guess I became chairman here now 2 years now. So finally getting the hang of everything, and no, I enjoy it. So
And that's one thing. Whenever, and obviously I haven't been here as long as Neil has, but he made it pretty clear. Whenever you're looking for a commissioner, you're in the need of a commissioner. That us as employees need to be the ones that really go out and do the promoting, do the recruiting, and that sort of thing, just like what we do with our interns. Because, like you said, you are our boss, you are basically our person that we report to and stuff like that. And so we want to make sure that we have a person that A, we trust, B, we know, have a lot of knowledge in the industry and what's going on. And then the third thing, which I think is most important, is having interest and wanting to learn and want to learn more education aspect on what we do and how things operate here. Because there are a lot of moving parts, and you maybe don't have direct authority as saying do this, do that, whatever it is. But I think that's the joy of it, is it's kind of an off the cuff sort of deal where it's not like you're having to stand over us 24/7, but knowing that things are getting done at the office and stuff like that. So I guess another thing with the commissioner deal is that you live in the community, you're working in the community, and we believe really important into the community involvement sort of things and stuff like that. And obviously, you're a part of a lot of different boards, a lot of different organizations and stuff like that. But how would you rank being a commissioner compared to some other things as far as level of importance? And you don't have to make us feel bad if it's not number one either.
no,
So.
no, that's a pretty easy one here. So I guess I actually I'll talk a little bit about passion for agriculture. So there was a time in my career where I pursued something different, and I thought I would attempt. It was a little bit more of a manufacturing role, and I tried that. I did that for about 8 months, and to put it politely, it just wasn't for me. So even when I was in that role, I guess I spent the last decade or so scouting fields, being involved in agriculture, and as I left, I found myself, even taking a lunch break. And I was still getting calls from farmers and things like that. That just you build a relationship. You work with these guys for 8, 10, 12 years, some of them now. And so even on my lunch break, when I was pursuing something else, I was still out checking fields. So I guess it comes down to just a passion for agriculture. So any way, shape, or form, yes, we all want community involvement. We all want local. But lucky for me, I get to do that and be involved with that passion for agriculture. Um, so I have some other family members. Yep, they're on the drift runners. All of our family, I guess you could say, is involved some way, shape, or form. But me, I get to roll everything into one. My agronomist career, yep, my agriculture, and then community involvement. So it's a way to roll it all up into one. Yep.
And I think it's really important. I know some folks, they kind of get focused on what they want to do. They never explore any other things and blah blah blah. I think it's really cool that you had the opportunity to go explore something different. Obviously, it's showing that this isn't for me. This isn't what I want to do. And then geared you back to what you truly love and where your roots are and stuff like that. And so then the next thing, obviously, if you guys can see it, Brian's got a Farmers Winn sweatshirt on.
Twice about it.
So that's kind of your other, I guess not other, but it is your full-time job, working at Farmers Winn. And so if you just want to kind of talk about what you do there and your roles and responsibilities and that sort of thing.
Yep. So I guess you could say the title I prefer anyway is agronomist. I take a lot of crap from farmers that, oh, you're a salesman or salesman this or you salesman bugging farmers, and I can't deny it. We are salesmen too. We sell seed, chemical, and fertilizer, but agronomist is the term that I prefer. I also obtained my CCA license, certified crop advisor. So just like these guys, there's continuing education every year. The way ag evolves, evolves at such a rapid pace here. But yeah, so I'm an agronomist for Farmers Winn. I work with, oh boy, it'd be hard for me to put a number on it. I probably talk to about 100 local growers. I actively sell to, I suppose, 60 or 70 of them, I guess. Maybe that's irrelevant, but a lot of local farmers here. So, as an agronomist, we are supposed to be the brains, I guess, the backbone, have the insight. There's rhyme or reason as to what we do and why we do it that way. It's no different than you guys in your line of work, I guess. So, so yeah, I work with local farmers. Yes, I do sell seed, chemical, and fertilizer as well. But like I said, agronomist is the term that I prefer. So
I think what's really cool is people maybe refer to you as a salesperson. You might not like that term and blah blah blah. But what I think is really cool is he's our chairman commissioner of our SWCD here, and I truly believe that we are more at times salesmen as well rather than conservationists, because we're out there, we're trying to sell the program, push the program and stuff like that. And to be a successful salesman, you got to be able to make that pitch and be able to kind of promote or show that person why that's the better option. And I think that comes with about any job, is you're always trying to sell a product, you're always trying to sell an idea or item, whatever it may be. There maybe is not always a dollar amount figured to it, but you're always trying to push that person to that next level, whatever it may be. And what's really fun is seeing that you're working with these local farmers. And it's hard to put a number on it, like you said. Sometimes you say 100, but once you start probably writing them down, it's probably maybe two or three times
there might
that.
Be more, yeah. It is rather interesting the way the positions coincide with each other. So I'll use an example. That would have been last spring. Now, granted, this was in a neighboring county. This was actually further south, but I had a grower call me, needed some brome grass, needed some alfalfa, and just over the phone, he was explaining to me that, well, they have a big water run that a couple hundred acres filter through, and he says we have problems every year with just washouts and drainage stuff. He goes, we're going to put some buffer strips in on both sides of this. And I told him, I says, well, before you do anything, I says, there's a program that could probably help you with that. And I remember him kind of giving me a blank stare. He said, well, it's springtime. This was in April, and we had a window where you could do projects like that. We weren't planting corn or beans yet. Guys are always looking at fixing tile and waterways and things like that. So anyways, this was Chickasaw County, I guess. So I says, well, call and check into it, because he wanted to put a 60-foot buffer on both sides. And it just so happened they were actually Chickasaw County was having a meeting that next day. So and I explained to him, I says, there's probably some criteria. 60-foot widths was one we had talked about. Percentage of brome grass and things. He says that's perfect. He says we'll pretty much do anything. I says, well, there's some cost share with it. So he had called in Chickasaw County. They got it. They got it drawn up, I think, that day or that afternoon, and it was approved at the next board meeting. And here he was, 48 hours later, putting in a buffer strips along this waterway, and with a significant cost share, I guess. So the positions, I guess. And that was a farm that I've been on now for about 8 years, and I have seen some extremes on there. What some weather has done. I've been on it after 4 or 5 inch rainfall, and this last summer now, everything was established. They took a cutting or two off of it, and I was looking at this, and I like this. I really liked it in this farm because the way it went through at an angle for my occupation, I guess, as far as scouting and getting in there late season. Looking at disease, this waterway now opened up the whole farm for me, so I can get to all these corners and get to places that I normally had to work really hard to get to, and now I could take a four-wheeler, get to the back 40, and get back in there. So it's something that I like in this position that I could see that for years to come, I guess. So
yeah, and I like how you point out these examples. When we first kind of talked about the Beyond the Dirt podcast, obviously we wanted to put it out there to help promote what programs we have, whether it's for the farmer listening to it, whether it's for other conservation professionals, or whether it's for anyone else there who may be listening to it. And just understanding that a lot of times we get the bad model that the co-ops are working against us, or they're not helping us, or whatever it may be. And I think that mantra has really switched over in the last few years.
Yeah.
Both like exactly what you're talking, where now you're able to explain what programs may be available, at least to go check it out. And then which I think, and I would like to talk about a little more, is the cover crop part of it. Maybe, and you can probably explain it better, but in my mind, it seemed like, say, 5 years ago, it maybe wasn't the best idea, or the co-ops maybe didn't want to push it as much because they were nervous about it. Maybe there was some extra cost to the farmer, or this, that, whatever. But I think that's really changed now, and maybe you can explain your mentality behind all that also.
Absolutely. Now, again, I can kind of speak out of both sides of my mouth here, but in the end, we're going to get around to the same subject here. So cover crops, obviously, in our county have grown exponentially over the last few years, okay? Now, when we first started promoting a lot of this, and, we had a little bit, probably even, it's probably been 7, 8, 9 years ago, we tried a little bit, things hit or miss. It seems like the last 2, 3 years, it's just extremely, well, maybe even 4 years, extremely ramped up. So from a co-op perspective, it means starting that season a little bit earlier for us. And remind me, I'll come back to that as far as terminating cover crops, at least my opinion on that. But, it means us starting our spring a little bit earlier, because in a normal year, we have X amount of acres to get over. Well, when we have to make extra applications and terminate cover crops, it means getting over X plus Y. So, yes, there is a little bit more work involved for us. The airport, most of our cover crops, well, it's probably closer to half and half that get applied aerial. We do a lot of aerial stuff over top of corn. Assuming we have a timely harvest on beans, it means a little extra work for us. We're always making that pass, I guess you could say, spreading fertilizer. So for the applications after beans are a little bit easier there. It's just a time, the way the calendar year and everything meshes. 2020, we could talk a few years about spring planting dates and stuff like that too. So 2022, we had a lot of seed that didn't get put until mid-May. So there's times where, yes, cover crops can be a little frustrating from our perspective. Last year was maybe one of them. We had a lot of seed that we didn't start planting here till about, we had some guys get an early start on May 7th or May 8th. It wasn't very pretty at that time. We had some pretty cool soil temps. May 11th, 12th, 13th was probably the bulk of it. So and we didn't have favorable weather up until before that either. A lot of cool temps. So, now we're trying to cram in an entire spring into a 4-week period, and we still have cover crops to work with. But as long as we know ahead of time going into the season what we're dealing with, we can work around that. So the one thing I will say with cover crops, at least from my side of the desk, I do like to see growers terminate that cover crop earlier in the spring. So we have tried, I guess we've tried over the years too, guys applying hydrous in the spring, guys put urea out. We as a company do a lot of liquid fertilizer, 32%. So we have tried putting in our chemicals with 32% and terminating cover crops. We run into a lot of antagonism between the chemistries and the fertilizer and stuff like that. So, and the other thing is that's getting done later and later in the season. So I like to see, April 15th, April 20th, April 25th, to see an early pass with just a glyphosate Roundup product. And lucky for us, glyphosate has come down tremendously in price. A year ago, we were sitting here, and we were kind of cursing at the whole marketplace, the COVID economy, shortages, logistics. It was a nightmare. Roundup, it's not rocket science. Roundup went up 4x in price. So I'm happy to say, sitting here now, that has come down in half right now. And actually, that market probably continues to soften a little bit here. So terminating a cover crop is going to be a lot cheaper in 2023 than what it would have cost you in 2022. So my vote is just get out there early, make that separate application. Too many times we've tried doing it with fertilizer. We've kind of gotten a halfway's kill with it. And then you have crops that are V4, V5, V6, and you're still kind of fighting them cover crops, I guess. So my 2 cents would be to just make an early pass and take care of it that way. So
Yeah, and it's pretty obvious, especially here in the state of Iowa, the challenges we run into. I mean, up here in northern Iowa, we have a completely different climate than as soon as you cross probably Highway 20, and then
20.
from 20 to 80 is a whole nother climate, and then 80 south is completely different. And so
it's always interesting because as I take drives, during the winter, sometime February and March, we'll get away. And yeah, you get into Illinois and you get the southern parts of Illinois, and cover crops just plastered it. And the cover crops are extremely established. They're 12, 16, 18 inches tall, and it looks absolutely beautiful. So one thing with us in Northeast Iowa, yes, we have that shorter season. A lot of times, yeah, we can't get in and spray these off until late April at best. And there's years when we've had snow in late April up here, but no, that's where we're trying to get to, I guess. The one way we can do that is though the aerial application and getting over the crops, late August, things like that. So we have an airport right here in Cresco. We're very fortunate for that. Actually, Cresco's kind of a hub for our Farmers Winn Cooperative. And we apply the bulk of our cover crops out of Cresco here. So we got planes going 20, 30 miles in both directions to cover acres. So
and one thing, we've kind of mentioned it too at different meetings and talking with other project coordinators and conservation professionals and stuff is trying to get to that grade A plus cover crop regimen. And I know you're probably never going to get there, and every single year is going to be different, but if we can get to that A plus, which what we would consider as getting that, like you said, the Illinois 12 to 18 inches of total growth, and then being able to, instead of having to apply a herbicide, to be able to do like the roller crimping.
Yes.
But we live up here in northern Iowa. It's hard to get stuff on. You never know with rain. You never know with temps in the fall. And then we come into the spring, and it could be mid-May before we're able to get in there at years. And so getting that crop as tall as we'd like it, to be able to then roller crimp it is sometimes impossible or a very big challenge. So we make do. We do the best we can, but and every year is going to be a little bit different. That's why some of the programs we've talked about multiple times, the EQIP and CSP, committing those guys to the 3 to 5 years, so it really commits those guys to really buy into the aspect. And if they do have one bad year, they can try to make a few tweaks and work around it, like you said. So, but on your end of it, I don't know how that would, as far as pulling hair out, making things work. How does that? When you see a guy that comes in, he says, "Hey, I got this EQIP application, EQIP contract with NRCS. I have to do it for 5 years," and he's got just a god awful year with it. What's kind of your steps as far as trying to get him turned around on the right foot?
Well, you brought up a good point, Hunter. 3 to 5 years with that EQIP, and I agree 100% because we've had springs that have been tough in cover crops. This last year, 22, we couldn't get out there till mid-May, and then of course at that time, Mr. Farmer, he wants to plant, he wants to spray fertilizer, he wants this, and this. Well, in a lot of cases, we have to terminate this cover crop first. So, now I will say, let's go back to 2019 and 2020 was absolutely beautiful. Yeah. 2020, we were out there in the spring. I remember making some cover, spraying out some cover. April 5th, April 8th, April 10th. We even had a couple guys planting some early beans in early April, things like that. So on a year like that, you have them conversations with growers that, yes, 2022 might have been frustrating. 2021, I believe, was a pretty par spring. We did do a lot of early April 10th, April 15th applications and stuff like that. So it's just like anything else. You take the good with the bad. We also had a frost one year that set back a lot of things too. That would have been in 2021. So you remind growers with anything, there's some risk involved. But spring of 2020, we were out. Growers at that time, it was beautiful conditions on April 10th, April 12th. However, we couldn't plant. A lot of it was crop insurance cutoff dates. You can't plant anything too early up here. So, they couldn't plant. Beautiful time to terminate cover crops and get started for the season. So
I remember that 2020 season very, very easily because that was kind of our first banner year as far as getting some of our special EQIP pots of money funded. And so there's a lot of acres that got put out. We had a great fall, a great spring, and we had multiple people coming to us, mainly from the public, not necessarily the farmers. They knew what it was, but wondering if there was a lot of pasture acres getting planted because a lot of these fields were just solid green, they look like a golf course. If you would have gone out there and mown them, it would have looked just absolutely beautiful. So, like you said, you have some really great years, you have some really bad years and stuff like that. But nonetheless, that's why on our side of things, the best thing you can do is have a good working relationship with that farmer and with that agronomist, the different co-ops, so that you understand the pros and cons, what they're working with. Make sure they understand what we're working with as conservation professionals, so that everyone's on the same page. Because the more communication that can go in between each other, the more learning experiences there are. Hopefully, the more knowledge you can get and put yourself on the right foot. So,
yeah, by all means, do yourself a favor and work with your local cooperative or ag retailer. Make them aware of them cover crops. It never fails every year. There's stuff that we, for example, if a grower decided to drill something in after his beans, if we're not aware of it throughout the winter season, and all of a sudden we just get phone calls on, May 15th, hey, we need to take care of this and that. We'll do it. Don't get me wrong, but we like to know and be proactive and be on top of things.
Well, and as far as a cost or price aspect too, I'm going to assume the more seed you can buy in bulk, probably the cheaper it's going to be for that farmer. And so that's probably one of the number one questions when we're working with farmers, and we can present them with an EQIP application or contract, say, hey, this is how much you're going to get. Normally the first question they're going to ask is, how much is it going to cost me?
Yeah.
And if you don't have that number dialed in, or you don't know what the different seed costs are going to cost, plus the application, you're really sending that guy in blind or that person in blind. It's not really fair to them. It's not fair to yourself. So do just that extra little bit. It's as simple as a quick phone call most times, and ask them what these different ones are and stuff like that.
Yeah, just like anything else in this economy, things fluctuate. They fluctuate on our end too. Even with excuse me, South Dakota having some dry years, rye seed has become pretty tight over the years. So, yes, just coordinate things with everyone. So and be proactive. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah. So then you mentioned the North Dakota South Dakota thing last year. That was something that we actually started to deal with as far as both the seed shortage and application. We started to explore some different options as far as seeding, as far as winter hardy mainly. And being that it's getting hard to put on with the drill, the aerial is one thing.
Yeah.
They wanted to explore some different options, and the subject of winter camelina came up for us.
Yes.
If you want to kind of go through that as far as what you think about it, what's good, what's bad, what we need to look forward to.
Yeah, winter camelina was, for me, a blessing. I was really glad to see that on there. So for a couple of reasons here. First off, I use winter camelina on my own farm. So I applied a cover crop, and the reason I liked that was because of the, correct me if I'm wrong, it's a November 1st
Yep.
cutoff date. Yep, so we had up until November 1st to get that applied, so which matches the rye timing. So for a lot of growers following a soybean crop, assuming you planted at a decent time, even in this year, we were questioning it at one time because we knew a lot of these beans didn't get put in until even May 15th, 18th, 20th. Is everything going to be harvested in time to get this winter camelina out there? Because a ground application is a lot cheaper than aerial. So to be able to qualify for EQIP, have a multi-species cover crop, and to be able to apply it with fertilizer by ground, it was a win-win-win all the way across the board. So, but I can tell you, last year, even with the late planting, boy, we got everything applied. Knock on wood, I guess. So, the same thing from my side of the desk. I had a list of growers, 10, 15 growers that I knew that we were going to put winter camelina in that mix. We had it all ordered. The only downfall I would say to winter camelina is it is a very, very fine seed. It's very tough to work with. So I do know our guys in our fertilizer plant, we were just careful in that mixing process. We tried to handle it as little as possible. We didn't want that seed sifting through anyway. So winter camelina, it's actually even more fine than like an alfalfa seed is. Wow. So yeah, we made it work. We were just careful. In a couple cases, we did double spread some fields too, just to make sure we were getting good patterns and weren't going to have any skips or anything like that. So, but yes, the for EQIP, at least my go-to, yes, would be the rye and the winter camelina. So
good. That's something that we really look forward to. One thing, and I'm by no means an expert on this end of it, but as far as the termination, what's your experience has been with that winter camelina, good, bad, and different?
Well, And I'll actually tell you, the winter camelina, we really jumped in here last year, so I might be able to answer that a little bit better here in a few weeks, I guess. So all that I know is it didn't really alter our chemical plans. We're gonna go, you can make that spring pass pretty cheap now. I'll use just some generic numbers, but like I said, with Roundup being half price of what it was last year, between the Roundup, we throw some water softener, some ammonium sulfate in there. And at that point in time, we can do a pre-spraying. We don't have to worry about following rows or anything like that. We have nice sprayers, shut-offs and things like that. So, around $15, you can make that early pass and terminate that cover crop. So, when we see equip numbers, 60s, something like that.
I mean, it really depends. In this last batch of guys or farmers we've been getting in, depending on what pot of money and what you're pairing it with. But we've seen all the way up to $82 an acre.
I'd say you can talk a little bit more on numbers. So I had seen some around 64, 65. So when we look at the costs of putting the cover crop out there in the fall, and even at those numbers, even if you do have to aerial apply it still makes a lot of sense. So even the aerial application, getting the cover crop out there, and with an early spring termination, it's still very attractive numbers, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yep. And then the next thing with the winter camelina, in which we did a little bit of exploring with, and it sounds like this next fall could be a lot of fun, is the drones.
Yes.
And so I know we got a couple folks here in the county that are already doing that, looking to expand, looking to continue that. But as far as your experiences with the drones, what have they been? I know they've done a lot of chemical application for you guys as far as like the fungicide and stuff. But how do you like it? How do you look forward to it in the future?
So our company, we do own and operate a few drones within the company. And you will get some mixed opinions on this. And what a lot of that is going to be by territory, so north to south. So as we go from where we're at, we're kind of on the border here in Cresco, because our southern locations, southern and western, operate completely different fields than what we do up north. We have some locations into Houston, Minnesota, Rushford, Minnesota. Those guys up there, drones are the golden ticket, because we can't get helicopters into some of these places. Airplanes are a definite no. I mean, as a rule of thumb, an airplane has to fly about 150 miles an hour just to stay afloat. So airplanes are hard no. Helicopters, we worked with helicopters for a long time. But even then, it's risky, just like anything. Those guys are a different breed to begin with, I guess, in my opinion. So great pilots, but my word, it's risky. So the drone applications, as you go further north and east, are going to become a bigger and bigger deal. South and west, we have big fields down there. There's a lot of 80s and 160s, which is beautiful for our territory. So the plains still kind of have the advantage down there just for covering acres. But I know we have looked at purchasing more going forward, and just like anything else, it's the manpower to run it and stuff like that. So, but there's farms this year, and I'll use an example at least on the fungicide side of things. There's farms up there that we could never get to before, never apply. Fungicide was a big ticket for us last year. 30, 40, 50 bushel responses. So by having those drones and the capabilities to do that, the other thing is those drones are expensive, like anything else. The longer window, the more we can do with them, the more profitable we can be, and the more we can assist everyone else. So with that cover crop season, it's ironic that fungicide season about ends. That corn gets into that brown silk stage. Once everything gets pollinated, where those drones would normally be shut down, put away for the season, now we can turn around and use these things for another month and get cover crops out. So.
Yeah, and that's what we really look forward to, is especially with those non-winter hardy species, the radishes, the turnips, that sort of thing. Those drones obviously aren't able to hold as much as an airplane. They're able to hold that 50 to 60 pounds probably max.
Correct. Yeah. I think that might be on the high side too, but yeah.
And so they're not able to do near amount of acres as what an airplane can do at times. But being a non-winter hardy species or the winter camelina, we're only looking at 2 to 8 pounds per acre.
I was going to say, I think and don't quote me kids on this, because we had some 75-25s, and that 25% was 1 pound. So yeah, 4 pounds. Even look at some of the clovers and things like that, around 6 pounds per acre, 6 to 8 and stuff like that. So for us to utilize those drones for another month of the year,
Oh, absolutely.
It's a blessing. Yes.
Absolutely. And then the other thing too is, I mean, everyone likes to talk about the coverage and stuff like that. They don't like to see their chemical getting put on an opposite field, or the cover crop seed going on an opposite field. And with those drones, they're really pretty precision as far as getting it on where they need to be.
Absolutely. So, we talked, excuse me, a little bit earlier about terminating cover crops, and we talked a lot about applying cover crops over bean stubble. The one thing I will bring up is we talk about making that extra application. Okay, for the most part, that's only being done ahead of corn acres.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so a lot of these guys no tilling beans, and if we want to get involved into chemistry, chemical families, and things like that, for the most part, guys no tilling, we're already making that burn down application. So I'm going to go back even a little bit further. We talked about getting into that 3-year and 5-year program. Okay, so when you're looking at cover crops and when you're looking at aerial application in the fall and early termination in the spring, ahead of the corn acre, that number might be a bigger cost.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yep.
when you're factoring that cover crop though ahead of a soybean crop, there's really no additional chemical costs.
Mm-hmm.
So agronomically, you look at chemical modes of actions. Once a bean plant is emerged, there's a lot less chemical families that we can use. So around 90% of our territory, is using a pre-emerged chemical on beans. So, and by that, there's chemical families that you can apply to those acres before the soybeans are emerged up. So, and most of those, in a no-till situation, we already have, a Roundup or a 2,4-D or a dicamba. So, one of those chemical families in there. So, really, ahead of a bean crop, there is no additional costs for that application, assuming you're doing a 2-pass bean program, like I said. But
being we're still talking termination and a little bit of drones and stuff, do you foresee the possibility or the opportunity to use those drones or even airplanes to terminate that cover crop after getting a corn or bean plant in the ground?
We have discussed that. We've actually spoke with some of our aerial companies about that as well, about coming back in the spring. The problem with that is these pilots are few and far between. Okay, and when you look at the United States as a whole, we actually have a helicopter company, but in the springtime, they're aerial applying a bunch of fertilizer in the Carolinas. These companies also, one of them, they spray on some Christmas trees, farms down in Florida. They spray some national forests in California. So it's just hard working with those aerial companies. Now, the drone thing, that's a different story because having that in-house and stuff. So, yes, I do foresee going forward, we will start to play around with that a little bit as custom applicators become tougher and tougher to hire.
Yeah.
It's a competitive world out there. So,
well, and like we always say too, as far as construction season goes, we definitely would rather be up against frost or freeze up rather than a farmer on a planter.
yes.
And I'm sure you guys are in the same boat as far as getting the herbicides out there and the chemicals.
I can't say I've
and
heard
stuff
it that way, but I will agree 100%
Yep.
because everyone's tension in the springtime is rather high. So
Yes.
the more we can take care of in the fall and be proactive, the better off we are in the spring.
Yep,
Yes.
and I know that's probably one of the bigger concerns that some of the folks up here have as far as getting that cover crop terminated and not allowing that cover crop to get too tall, because then it gets a little bit tougher with the chemicals and stuff like that. Is that we have a very short window, like we've already talked about, as far as the perfect temps to get that stuff killed off. So,
Yeah.
looking for that's something we can keep trying to modify and change, and that's what makes the beauty of your job and our job and working together, is that we get to play around with those different ideas, and we don't have to do it over 30,000 acres or whatever.
Don't
It
have
can
to.
be done on a little bit here, a little bit there.
Yeah.
So we've talked about the commissioner role, we've talked about your work role. Probably the most fun that you get to do is farm yourself. And so
Yeah.
Brian is a local farmer here in Howard County. He operates a few different farms, both in the Turkey River watershed and outside of it and stuff like that. And so kind of talk us through how long you've been farming, what you look forward to, the pros and cons, and all the above of
Yeah.
it. So let
Yeah.
it rip.
So I had graduated from Iowa State in 2011. So 2011 would have been my first year actively farming. So and I just a few hundred acres. It's family stuff here, but I have to laugh a little bit because the difference in families. So my father-in-law owns a piece of dirt here, a little bit closer to town, which would be in this Turkey River watershed, and then my own dad. We have a farm a little bit closer to Lourdes. A little better, a little blacker dirt, a little flatter country, but the difference in, and both my father-in-law and dad are almost identical in age, the difference in the two operations, I have to laugh a little bit from my side of the desk because my dad can be known to be a little bit old school. Okay, if it was up to him, I think we'd still be moorboard plowing and chiseling in the fall and things like that. And then I have a father-in-law who is 100% for conservation, big no-tiller. Actually, when I took over his farm, that was a big stipulation. We had to continue no-till. He was unaware of cover crops, I guess, so that was something that I brought in now. So that farm, I would say, is 100% up to speed with where I would like it to be. I do a crop share with my dad, actually, so I don't want to piss him off either, But yeah, we've gone to a little bit more of a minimal till. I can't get him to quite make that cover crop jump yet, but that's something to have in the meantime. So yeah, I do operate a few hundred acres of my own, which I feel helps me extremely in my position because when I'm out there working with other farmers, anytime I can bring up, hey, I do this on my farm, or again, we get that salesman. Oh, you're just a salesman. You're trying to sell me this. You're trying to sell me a fungicide. And, well, if I can have that conversation, hey, here's what I did on my farm. Last year, I left a check strip for fungicide, and it was a 28 bushel difference. I took my drone up, took all the pictures in the world. You could see it right down to the row. And so now when anybody wanted to argue with me this winter, is fungicide going to pay? Is this something we should do? I can have that conversation. Hey, here's what I do on my own farm. Here's why I do it. And I have my own skin in the game, so to speak. You can have those conversations. You can have marketing conversations. We're not just a salesman at that point. So yeah, between being an agronomist, soil and water board, and then farming myself, I get the whole trifecta. So.
Yeah. So that intrigued me. A lot of different questions pop in my head. Obviously, you got two completely different facets that you're working with. How do those conversations look when you're talking with your own father as far as trying to convert or trying to make small changes towards where you are with the other operations?
So the big one we did, my dad also has some cattle anyways. And kind of like I had talked about earlier about that grower we were putting in the headland buffer program there, bro. I knew about that program because I implemented that on my own farm. So on Dad's farm, we have about a 20-acre chunk of timber. And every year, my dad, he wants to farm every square inch of this thing we can. So what are we doing? We're smashing up equipment going along these trees every single year. And some of it's on the north side. It's a tighter clay. It's a wetter soil. There's tile problems. It's just a mess. I look at from my side of the desk what we're spending on a per acre for inputs. This last year, you could talk fertilizer alone. $250, $260 an acre is probably just a maintenance program for a corn acre right now. So throw seed, throw chemical, throw fungicide, throw the crop insurance, all the inputs on top of it, even excluding land, you're $600-700 an acre. So I got to sit down with Dad and have a conversation. Hey, we're putting $600-700 an acre along this timber here of inputs, and every year this corn is waist high. Deer are coming out taking it out. I says, you need hay, you need roughage for your cattle and stuff. I says, let's look at this headland buffer program. So we ended up putting in this case, we did 40 foot just to match planter stuff, but along the road, so we could access things a lot better, getting trucks in and out. So we went along the road, went along the timber, and then on the north end of the farm, just from, God, I'm trying to think how long. Well, it's a century farm on the other side of the road. So let's just say 30-40 years of headland compaction, pulling the same wagon, same tractors in and out, same thing, a real tight clay soil, compacted garbage almost for that matter, I want to call it. So we put the headland buffer in along on that side. So now it's a win-win. He's got roughage for his cattle. We're not spending $600-700 an acre on ground that isn't going to give us an ROI. So we've incorporated the headland buffers. We've gone to a lot more minimal till. My dad would still just love to see a disc chisel going through out there. So we actually, this last year, it's baby steps here because this has been a couple year deal. So we have a neighbor that has a vertical till machine. So I can't get him to a true no-till, but I do have him down to a vertical till. We're a rotated acre, so I have him down to a vertical till program. My father-in-law, yes, I have his farm, no-tilled and cover crops and everything like that. So slowly but surely, we're gonna get them on the same page. It's just taking a little bit of time. So,
and that's like anything else. I mean, we work with a lot of folks like that too. That it's the small baby steps. It's starting out with that state cost share. Do it the 1 year, maybe even do a non-winter hardy species, so they don't have to worry about the termination in the spring and that sort of thing. And then they get one experience. They start talking to some other farmers, and all of a sudden, next thing you know, they're doing a single species. Next thing you know, they're doing multi-species, and they're no-till and putting buffer strips in, and just kind of really spurs from there.
So my dad is, again, it's a crop share deal. So what is he looking at? He's looking at yield at the end of the year. Okay, so I have brought this up to my dad. I look back at his crop insurance and before I started farming and things like that. And don't get me wrong, great yields and everything like that. But the last 3 years have been 3 years of record yields getting pulled off this farm. So I can have a conversation with dad. I say, hey, and granted, weather-wise, we've had some good years, so maybe it's a two-way deal. But hey, Dad, we've gone to vertical till. We've taken out some of that marginal ground, and we're continuing to, get some 230, 240 bushel corn yields, which for up here is about as good as we can grow. So, I can have that conversation. Yes, we've gone to minimal till, and we've maintained these yields. I have even taken my dad for a trip around the country in the springtime like this, and I like to do it when the snow is still in the ditches, because you can learn a lot by looking at tillage practices and looking at the snowfall in the ditch. So it was about 2 years ago we made a 20-30 mile loop in February, and we drove around and looked at the fields that had been no-tilled, minimal tilled, vertical tilled, and just took mental observations of what these road ditches looked like, what these snowbanks looked like. And I'm not criticizing the guys that are conventional till. There's a rhyme or reason behind some of it stuff, but there's strong correlation between black dirt, topsoil in the ditches, and rough tilled fields.
Yep, absolutely. And then the next thing too that I think is really important, you talked about going out when there's still snow on the ground, but one of my probably favorite times to go out is maybe right after planting, or once that snow is gone and we get a good rainfall, but there's no frost or frozen ground. You'll see exactly which fields did some no-till or cover crops, because there's not much, or if any, water standing at all. You go to the next field that could be right across the fence that's been beat up or been tilled or whatever it may be, and there's water standing. It's slicker than snot out there. You can't get around or nothing.
And I get to see that on it. Like I said, I work with, so let's say 60, 70 farmers and a few farms apiece and stuff like that. So my springtime, yes, I'm involved a lot in operations, getting sprayers where they need to and sprayers. So as a rule of thumb, take a June day. I will go to the office in the morning. I will get everybody a list of fields to spray and orders and what direction, kind of get the logistics going, get everybody going in the different directions. But then, let's see, 8, 9, 10 o'clock, by the time everybody's done and gone, they're good for the day. I will spend the next 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 hours scouting fields. So, I get to see farms that had a cover crop applied that we terminated in the spring, and how this stuff's coming up and the differences. I've been out after some big rainfall events and things like that. I've been out in the country during big rainfall events, and seeing the way the water moves through some of these farms and fields, and the way they're managed differently. I get to see a lot from my side of the desk. So
that's where the rainfall simulator that NRCS has. You see both sides. You see a lot of jaws that hit the ground because they can't believe what's going on or what happened and how that's even possible. And then the other aspect of it, you have people who call it a liar. They say, "Oh, that's not true," and they just will not believe it for whatever life of them.
That'd probably be my dad, by the way. You could put it right in front of them. It's
that's just what it takes. All people are different. And they all have different mindsets and whatever. One thing I want to come back to real quick is the ROI, the return on investment. You mentioned how much you were having in inputs and what you're making out of it, and it wasn't penciling out and sort of things like that. And we have that conversation a lot, even whether crops are $8 corn or $2 corn. We refer to it with the CRP because it doesn't matter what that price is, whether it's high or low, those input costs are going to follow along with that pretty closely. And if you can really see what you're truly making per acre and then compare that what you could be making on a 10-year average or 15 average with CRP, that's usually where we start to sell as much CRP, whether it's a high year or low year.
Yeah, over the years, actually, there was a spreadsheet that I built back when I was at Iowa State in 2009, and I've shared this with growers. I probably do this every single week. Different grower, there's about 10 different lines that we can input there, and it's unreal because some of these there's some growers that just don't know exactly what's going into that per acre. We had talked about fertilizer. Let's go back to 2020. I'll look at nitrogen. Was around that 40 cents per unit of nitrogen, all sources. And for a while there, we had UAN knocking on 85, 90 cents per unit. So a 2.5x in fertilizer prices over the years. So where guys used to spend back in 2020, $100 an acre would give you everything you needed to maintain your fertilizer program. Yeah, we were knocking on here just for this last prepay season around 250. So by putting that into that spreadsheet line by line, and for the most part, just leave land out of it. Okay, assume they own it. The other thing, there's different land rents, and there's quite the array of land rents. So we leave land just out of it, and actually that spreadsheet calculates it into a profit, or sorry, well, there's a couple different ways. It breaks it down. One of them it'll tell you is at that yield what you need for a price, but vice versa, at that price what you need for a yield. So then some of these guys are looking at, without land, you need, even a lot of cases, 120 bushel per acre. You throw land in there, you get 140, some bigger numbers, stuff like that. And then I'll use back to my dad's situation. You got the tree line there, you got shades. It's always wet in there. In fact, a couple of years we had to pull the planter out and come back a week or two later and try to plant this stuff. And then come harvest time, we're not even combining 100 bushel corn along this tree line stuff. Okay, there's better ways of doing this. So that's the ROI and putting the dollars and cents behind it is big. Yes.
And that's one thing. I know we go to a lot of different conferences and stuff for work and whatever, and we try to promote these programs and try to say this is why it's better, this is why it's better, this is why it's better. But truly, at the end of the day, you got to make that bottom number pencil out, and that farmer's got to be able to have a healthy living and get to that next year, get to that next day, be able to pass something down to their family.
Support a family, yep.
And that's truly what it needs to come down. And as a conservation professional, we need to understand that. We need to work through that with them. And it's not just, oh, yeah, well, I have 240 bushel corn and corn selling at this price or whatever. It's not just that. It's what's going into it and what you're truly spending. And then what we're able to put on top of things to maybe help sweeten that pot. Yeah, and that's where I think our EQIP cover crops and stuff, with such a high payment incentive right now, farmers are making money on EQIP at the moment.
You said it. I wanted to say it earlier, but it is a profitable deal with the way some of these, the glyphosate, the Roundup has come down in price. Now, a lot of you guys, if you guys hear that, you might argue with me because there's a lot of other chemicals and a lot of other chemical families that continue to be tight. So when you're looking at your whole chemical program, I can probably tell you it's going to be more expensive. So and when you look at an acre of corn or acre of beans, yes, that has, but to terminate that cover crop, that I can tell you has gotten cheaper. So and then you look at the different methods of getting it applied in the fall. There's a lot of ways to make that profitable for you.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And then one of the conversations we've had with a lot of folks that have been doing the cover crops or the no-till, whatever it may be, for multiple years, is they're even happy if they break even. And sometimes if they're losing just a little bit money on that total application, they're okay with that because they're seeing the benefits, whether it's increasing their yields, the soil health benefits, whatever their morals maybe sometimes are, they can take that dollar amount off it a little bit. And justify putting that out there.
Yeah, I look at driving around the country in the springtime and just seeing green. That's what I like to see. So like I said, our falls can be kind of a hit or miss as to how this gets established. We're not Southern Illinois. We're not going to get 10, 12 inches of growth on the stuff in the fall. But it's to see green in the springtime and know that there's an active growing crop. And like I said, even last year, where a lot of times we didn't get in until May 15th, May 20th. Well, this cover crop's been active out here now for almost 60 days. So that's what I like to see in the springtime.
Yeah. So we've talked on a lot of different things. Hopefully you pulled your notepad out because we threw a lot of numbers at you guys. But that's just kind of the nature of it and what we get to deal with every single day because that's truly, I can think on a day-to-day basis, yes, it's different every day, but it seems like every single day I got a calculator in hand crunching numbers and trying to make things work, whether it's reporting, whether it's prices, whether it's what that farmer could be getting, whatever it may be. So hopefully there's a few high school students out there listening that are going, I just hate math. And it's like, well,
you're going to get used to it.
Get used to it. You're going to be needing it.
You're going to want it.
You're going to have to be starting to put some alphabet soup in there too as far as X, Y, and Z. So take it seriously. But Before we sign off, I got a couple different things. Just want to kind of recap. What do you look forward to most as far as working when you got your farming, you got the co-op, and you got the commissioner? One sentence. What is the best thing about all that put together?
For me, and a lot of guys laugh, farming is my vacation. And even in the springtime, I get a little busy at work. I have to hire some stuff custom done. But at the end of the day, if I can go home and be around my farm and run equipment, that's what I look forward to the most.
Yes. And then I got a question. I'll just do one. It's a kind of a multi-answer question. And we'll see how well Brian has listened to prior podcasts.
I've done some homework. Okay.
How many CRP practices can you list with the component code with it?
Oh my gosh. I don't even know if I'd know where to start. You're like the acronyms and all that?
Yeah, so like I'll give you an easy one. So like a CRP practice would be like a grass waterway. A grass waterway is a CP8A. Grass waterway.
Yeah, we see a lot of CP25s, the CP25s and the 42s. And I know that, I guess, from a little bit doing homework on food plots and stuff like that. But oh boy, outside of that, I see them and they kind of come and go. You got me on that one, Hunter. So I'll give you that.
We got Tim Sadler on it pretty good. He was able to name the conservation practices, but they're not always all CRP practices, and so that's one thing Neil and I joke about. We're actually there's technically 43. There's a few of them above
43.
But they've definitely evolved. They've changed a little bit. Even with, like you mentioned it, the CP25, that's even changed where the CP25 is, yes, it's a CRP practice. It's more of our general practice, but that's been paired with our CP38, which is our pheasant recovery and different things like that, which has even changed just here in the last 6 months as far as how we need to be seeding the seed and that sort of thing.
43. All right.
And so, yeah, it's going to keep evolving every year. Who knows? By the time I retire, there'll probably be over 100 of them. But that's what makes our job so fun. Is it changes every day, just like your job. I mean, you never know what you're going to get into. And I think what's the most important thing as far as our aspect as a conservation professional is get out there, recruit a good commissioner, make them aware of what their roles and responsibilities are. It's not a lot, but it's very important what you guys have to do. And we take that very seriously. Have someone that you feel comfortable communicating with, because if you have commissioners that you only see once a month and you're not able to go talk to them, if they don't have that flexibility where we do all the time, we have a bunch of signatures we need, we got new grants coming in, whatever it may be. Hey, Brian, are you around? We can swing down, we'll get that signature. Can you stop by, whatever it may be.
I get to see these guys almost every single week. So
yeah. And it's extremely important because a lot of this stuff is needed to be done in a timely manner and whatnot. So make sure you guys get out there, do a good job of recruiting a good commissioner, just as important as it is when you're trying to find good interns and stuff like that. And then work with your co-ops and your agronomists and things like that. Understand where they're coming from. You don't always necessarily have to agree with it, but just be able to understand it so that when you're talking with that farmer, it's almost like you're the middleman there, and be able to have that conversation and be able to show some knowledge, because I've seen firsthand some folks who are very maybe pushy, you could say, and they're trying to really push a program, push an idea, and those farmers shut down really, really quick. Absolutely. And then you're not getting anywhere. If anything, you're going backwards. And so just trying to be understanding and know where they're coming from and what they maybe are thinking is really important in all aspects. So other than that, do you got anything you need to...
No. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate
Absolutely.
This is pretty easy for me to swing on by. So
absolutely.
Appreciate you guys.
Everyone we get on for guests are like, well, do I need to prepare? Do I need a script? It's like,
my
no,
first question.
there's nothing. We just go with what we think, and sometimes it's a little bit slow starting or a little bit jumpy, but at the end of the day, we know what we're trying to accomplish and trying to put out a good product. And it's been a few weeks since we've had a podcast rolling, so it's good to get back. We've been really, really busy with a lot of different things, and it looks like we're going to get back on track and start publishing some episodes here and hopefully grow that audience. I know last we had still been in 3 different countries, over 25 different states and stuff like that, and getting lots of views on different platforms. So it's pretty cool to see where it goes and grows. But we're going to keep plugging away, and as we work into the spring here, we're going to try to figure out some ideas and ways that we can maybe get out into the field with this. And hopefully put out that product that we're able to see those cover crops going, maybe we can get some drone footage from some folks to be able to put in here and stuff like
Absolutely.
that. So it's going to be a great spring season. Get those boots cleaned off because they're going to start to get muddy, and
We're gonna
and
get
get
warm
ready
here.
for
Yeah.
a good construction season, hopefully. So thanks again, everyone, for listening to the Beyond the Dirt podcast.